Toxicity of Gamer Culture. A couple articles about recent events in video games have become a stark reminder about just how vile, toxic, and overall downright violent towards anyone who is not a straight, white, cisgendered, able-bodied man gamer culture can be. It's why I don't consider myself to be a gamer at all, despite playing many games. And it's an overall example of the gatekeeping of geek and nerddom I've come to see more and more over the years. I've seen men mansplain to women that sex sells, and that's why Wonder Woman's breasts should be on prominent display. How black people can't be nerds, how only white dudes are into D&D, and to stop bringing in your political agenda when criticizing a game for not being more inclusive. But of all the various geekdoms out there, gamer culture continues to be particularly toxic, as evidenced by the rise of Gamergate, and the adoption of their tactics by other gamers. This has never been more evident than in the firing of Allison Rapp by Nintendo, and all because these gamers didn't get a boob sliding scale for a 13-year-old female character. Now, while Nintendo deserves its fair share of blame for hanging one of their employees out to dry and then firing her for having a second job, which was alright by them until Ellison was inadvertently made a celebrity, the gamers involved in her harassment led this campaign of hate and anger despite her having nothing to do with the localization that led to the removal of the boob scale. I go so far as to say that it just didn't matter to them. After all, Allison Rapp was a woman working at Nintendo, and gamers just don't like that, especially as she highlighted the harassment that she faced and mostly laughed it down. A recent Baldur's Gate expansion by Studio Beamdog, which includes founding members of BioWare, dared to have a transgender NPC who you only found out she was transgender if you talked with her for a lengthy time. How dare the people who originally made the game work on making it more diverse and inclusive in a later installation? It's like as if they, made diverse characters who were, gay, bi, transgender, and a whole other fantasy series, like, say, the entire Dragon Age installation. Here's a tip you've been giving people for years. If you don't like it, don't buy it. Of course, this hasn't stopped said gamers, most of whom I suspect I haven't even bought the game, from trying to sink the expansion through negative reviews alone. The sole shining light is that people who actually like to play games are sending their support to Beamdog, and the Beamdog devs themselves have stood firm on their decision. A recent article on the Tumblr, Latining, by the author told of a history of sexual assault and rape at gaming conventions, and how the general attitude by those who didn't commit the crime were complicit in it by keeping it covered up or just remaining quiet about it. It's a depressing read, but one that is sadly all too common. Most gamers don't want anyone harshing their fun and will go out of their way to ostracize, ignore, or make fun of anyone calling them out on their BS until they stop. If anything, in light of these examples and others, such as Gamergate, and the continued harassment of Anita Sarkeesian by gamer bros, some of whom have made entire movies about her content without having seen 1 second of it.
You know what, here's the thing, is if I had ever watched any of her fucking videos, I could have come up with a far tighter argument. But I have watched, she is so fucking toxic and pedantic, and I just don't care.
Gamer culture in particular seems to be this concentrated mess of sexism, misogyny, and racism. Why? I believe it's because there's still this sense of victimhood attached to being a geek that's been supported by a lot of media over the years. Movies like Revenge of the Nerds come to mind as the most obvious examples, but even recent series like The Big Bang Theory also exemplify this idea that geeks and nerds are these social outcasts who are unfairly denied girlfriends, to say nothing of other media which sends the same message about nice guys. It probably didn't help that D&D was hugely demonized in the US throughout the 80s, with movies like Mazes and Monsters starring Tom Hanks portraying the evils of pretending to have an adventure in a fantasy land. Or that censorship by the US Senate was a very real threat in the 90s, and particularly the censorship of bloody and body dismembering moves in Mortal Kombat when it was being brought to home consoles. Having geek and nerddom rooted in a straight, white, cisgendered, able-bodied male context without any thought or regard for people who identify otherwise exemplifies the white privilege that's been raised up over the centuries, particularly in Western nations. Within this context, there's an ignorance that quickly drops off in the hatred of anyone aside from them who would take an interest in hobbies such as comics, games, music, etc., that demands that no changes be made, no inclusiveness be included, and no quarter given by the hardcore gatekeepers who still think there's a social outcast in high school spurred by women. And it's up to all of us to take this narrative, especially us straight white dudes. I'm talking to you guys. We gotta do a lot of the heavy lifting on this shit. We gotta take this narrative and we have to drown it. We have to choke it until it no longer breathes and kill it. And if a casualty of that is gamer culture, then so be it. Fuck gamer culture for the cancerous tumor it's become. It has to be cut out and ejected off into outer space, or it gets sucked up into some black hole, or caught in the gravity well of a sun and burned up. I'm Triple J, and that's all I got left to say. Take care.